Welcome, everybody, once again to the Not a Rabbi podcast, the podcast where we discover new ideas in the Jewish tradition or something along those lines. Welcome all the live and in-person studio audience. We like to have you. Thank you very much. As always, we like to lead off with some gratitude, and I would like to thank the moderators of the Fifth Column unofficial Discord server for allowing me once again to use their space and their bandwidth or whatever here, and also so the NSA could snoop on us. Additionally, I would like to thank Logan Eastman for doing the wonderful theme music that he has done for me, and you should check out his Discord, not his Discord, but you should check out his Substack as well. It's not very... he doesn't post much, but when he posts, it is good. So it is a quantity, or quality, not quantity, of the posts, unlike my own weekly meanderings. Also, we are on Substack, notarabbi.substack.com. You can certainly subscribe to us there. We're also, for just the podcast, we are available wherever you can find semi-decent podcasts, or, quite adequate podcasts also. Good podcasts, I don't know if I've made it to that level yet. And of course, I have unplugged my lamp. So hold on one second. There we go. The plug for that lamp is in the worst position ever. Let me fix this again. Does it still cause... Okay, nothing like excitement. All right, so we have some feedback to deal with, actually, from the newsletter that I had sent out on Wednesday at 8:43 a.m. And we'll get to that. Oh, I'm an idiot. I cannot do things properly. notarabbi.substack.com. There we go. That's how we do things. We can type. Yay. All right. So we have some comments here on the newsletter. First of all, let's see if we got an update on the... okay, so first off, as those of you who have subscribed to the newsletter know, we have a poll, and I wanted to give you some poll updates here. And the question was, how should I classify my weekly discourse that I send out to everybody? And we came up with 3 options, really, and then a fourth, something else. The leader is Newsletter at 75%. Jewsletter came in at 25%, and keeping it as Newsletter is at 0. So it's a good thing that this was totally non-binding, because I don't have to pay attention to it at all. Okay, so that's the first thing about the update. There are 2 more days to vote. If you would like to go ahead and do so, I will post probably a link to that in the show notes. Now, let's get to the comments of this. And the questioner asked, let's see if the questioner is in. No, the questioner is not in. The questioner did ask the question about gatekeeping vis-a-vis Orthodox and Reform. And I was trying to think of, just as a mention to those of you who are in the chat, if this is your first time in, you're certainly welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question if you would like. Most people take advantage of the no mic chat channel that's right above it, so you can certainly do that as well. But the question was about gatekeeping with regard to Orthodox and Reform and Conservative, and I was trying to think of a good way to kind of talk about this. And I mean, is there gatekeeping really? I would say maybe nothing officially gatekeeping, but it's always, let's say, an Orthodox Jew will generally not go into a Reform synagogue for services or a conservative synagogue for services, but a Reform or Reform or conservative will definitely go into an Orthodox synagogue for services if they so desire. They don't have to. It's their decision. So I think that there's some maybe self-selecting instead of necessarily a gatekeeping that's going on there. Maybe I'm still struggling with it. I'm trying to figure it out. It's something that I'm not 100% sure of. I mean, Yeah, so I'm gonna leave it at that. I have a lot of probably random thoughts about it in terms of the best way to try to explain it. But I did want to mention that there is that comment. Any thoughts? Any comments about that? What about proselytizing, gatekeeping adjacent, both within Orthodox encouraging Reform to come back to the fold, and then outside of Judaism? Great question. And there is within the within Judaism. So Orthodox are encouraging Reform to come back to the fold, or even conservative. There is certainly that, but I would put it as, and there are different aspects to it, and I'll try to touch on that. But outside of Judaism, there certainly is not. In fact, when somebody does convert, they have to. There are a couple of things that they try in an Orthodox conversion. Obviously, I am speaking of only the Orthodox conversions. I am not speaking of conservative or Reform conversions, because I don't know anything about them. I do know about the Orthodox side of things, so that's why I'm going to talk about that. But generally, you have to show a very strong commitment to wanting to convert, and that first begins by asking 3 times, supposedly, if you can convert, and getting turned down 2 out of those 3. The last time, obviously, they will say yes. In addition to that, they then make sure that you are not romantically involved with anybody who may be Jewish, because then you may be converting for a wrong reason. You might be converting for this individual and not for the idea of being Jewish. And then finally, when the conversion occurs, then there is going to be a acceptance of all of the commandments, both the positive and the negative commandments. Positive meaning you should do something, negative meaning don't do something. And then you're going to go ahead and, can be converted, in essence. I've skipped a couple of steps, skipped a couple of things specifically. I just don't want to get into it right at this minute. So let's see here. I'm curious regarding conversion, because it is a thing in Christianity, spreading the good word, at least in Protestantism, the thing to do. Islam tends to assume you should submit or else, but I'm aware Judaism isn't seeking. No, it doesn't. It is something that really is. It's something that really is very, very strict. That Jews do not seek to proselytize, and we just are happy being ourselves. If somebody would like to join, then we talk to them and we actually try to talk them out of joining, and say, why would you even want to bother? It's so much problems. You take a look at the anti-Semitism that's going on. You take a look at these problems and the like, and it can be a problem. Not a problem, I shouldn't say that, but it's, we try to dissuade people first from converting before we go ahead. Within Judaism, there definitely is an idea to get people who are non-religious to become more religious. And you see this specifically with regard to the Chabad sect, or the Chabad Hasidim, where they will try to get men to put on wear tefillin. They'll always ask somebody if they're Jewish, if they're not Jewish, and the like. And women, they'll try to give, I think they give candles too or something, so that they could light the candles on Friday night, which is a commandment that not necessarily the women have, but the women have taken on, and the like along those lines. So there is something. And in fact, my brother-in-law, who has his own podcast, and I'll just give a shout out to that, Monday in Motivation with Rabbi Garfinkel. He runs a outreach organization which is focused on young professionals in Chicago, where what he does, and he talks to these young professionals, but they are a lot of times mostly non-affiliated and just want to understand more about what Judaism is, and then eventually maybe grow and develop further along those lines. And he's officiated plenty of weddings in that regard as well. Any other questions? Okay, with that, it doesn't look like there are any other questions, but thank you for the questions on that feedback. Definitely appreciated. And let's now move on to the news. So first, there's a little bit of news here, which always these news articles I find interesting. Otherwise, I wouldn't be posting them. I'm going to post this to the chat. And this is an article written by an individual named Rabbi Yossi Maris, who lives in San Antonio area, I believe. And this is about, one of his jobs is to be a kosher supervisor for the Orthodox Union. For those of you who are not familiar with it, the Orthodox Union is a huge organization. One of their major things that they do is they supervise food for being kosher. A lot of times, almost everything that you see food-wise will have a kosher symbol on it. From the Orthodox Union, there is a circle, and then within the circle there is an O, and then within the O there is a U, and that is obviously something that they do. But this is something I didn't even consider, which is MREs for the Israeli soldiers. I just had assumed that they would make those in Israel, but apparently not. Apparently Sterling Foods LLC, which is a company that does specialize in military contracts and MREs, meals ready to eat, wanted to produce specific items for the IDF. And it basically is talking about how this Rabbi Maris feels like he is helping out the Israeli soldiers, even though he is in Texas. Which I thought it was a very nice thing, but I thought it was very interesting in terms of, this is a logistic issue that a lot of people don't consider during wars, and like I said, I certainly didn't consider it myself, and so I just found this to be a very interesting thing. Any thoughts or feedback on this one? There is a need for kosher MREs. So the question was, I wonder if they supply any to the U.S. military, if there's ever a need. I would presume that there is a need for kosher MREs. My brother-in-law was in the 101st Airborne in Kuwait for a time. So I definitely know he was getting kosher food, and there was a chaplain there for them. Additionally, there are many officers, chaplains that will need kosher MREs. So I would assume that they do allow it. Yes, and it is a cool example of how small the world really is, and the miracle of capitalism. Yes, the invisible hand. So that is very, very, very true. I can agree with that completely. Hey, is my camera on? My camera is on, but I am not. Okay. Y'all can hear me, though. So that's the important thing, I guess. All right. So let's go on to this next question. And I may have to call in my legal correspondent for this, because it's an interesting case, and there are potentially First Amendment issues that are going on here. So, first off, I like to always say, please don't shoot the messenger for where this came from, because it came from the Daily Caller, which I think is more on the questionable side of the news publications, especially of the right. And if I'm incorrect on that, please correct me. But there was a lawsuit that was filed by the First Liberty Institute on behalf of the Chabad Jewish Center of Big Island. What happens is that on Shabbos, on the Sabbath, the rabbi hosts people in his home, and he was told that he has to get a permit to hold religious gatherings in his home. and his counter to this to a degree, or is, in this time of uncertainty and fear for many members of the Jewish community, defendants attempted to prevent Jewish residents of the Big Island from gathering together for prayer and celebration in accordance with their faith in the home of their rabbi. Neither the U.S. Constitution, the Hawaiian Constitution, or federal law tolerate such restrictions, and neither can this court. So apparently, and I'm not going to go through the entire article with you, because otherwise that would be very boring, but the county's zoning laws require a permit for residential property for religious purposes, but not for secular ones. So this is certainly a First Amendment issue. It seems that they are putting it squarely in that ballpark. The rabbi wanted to meet with the officials on several occasions, but was told to stick to the permit process. So this is what's happening. So just from my point of view here, I mean, I definitely think that the Hawaiian government state government of Hawaii is in the wrong. It sounds like it. Also, it sounds like the rabbi really wanted to try to work within the process, and they did not let him work within the process. Again, something that is a little bit troublesome. But thirdly, in terms of security, this probably would have been one of the easy thing to do in terms of being afraid of attacks, especially when you're dealing with some place like the Big Island. Then, there are not a lot of Jews there, I would presume. And so it's a very small number, and you're not, even though they have a lot of Jews, and again, we spoke about Chabad a little bit earlier, where a lot of their mission is, or they feel that their mission is outreach to non-affiliated or non-religious Jews. And so, excuse me. And so this may be, I think that they definitely have a case. We'll have to watch this to see how some of the decisions get handed down on this. This is clearly just the beginning of it. And this is not the first time that these types of issues have been, broached. Not regarding Hawaii specifically, but these types of issues are something that has happened specifically in different parts of here in the Northeast, where a lot of times they are going ahead and not wanting Jews to move in because it will, quote unquote, ruin their neighborhood. And so they will make different laws or create different laws and the like. It is problematic. So it is, and again, we've talked about this on an earlier episode with some of these cases with the Not a Rabbi podcast legal correspondent and legal expert, and we may have to get the said person back onto the podcast to discuss these issues. So a couple of comments here that have been thrown in. Somebody else is in agreement that this is definitely a First Amendment issue, both on religion and freedom of association. And then another comment here is that the Daily Caller is paying attention to this because of recent Hawaiian gun ruling, where they say that aloha spirit matters more than the supremacy clause or the Supreme Court. So there's a partisan angle. The Daily, again, I'm not surprised by this coming from the Daily Caller. This is why I prefaced my sayings on this, and I'm not surprised at all. And there's a lot of comments here. Not a lot of comments. There's only 5 comments on the site, thankfully. And none of them use big words either, which is not a surprise. So anyway, those are the 2 comments. Any thoughts or feedback, additional thoughts or feedback from this news article? So we have another comment that came in. There's a whole suite of First Amendment cases that defined religious rights that feature the Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe Judaism can be the next foreground ensuring religious protections. Well, I certainly hope so. I certainly hope that we can be the next foreground. Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses. There was what was that? There was a major. Is that a major case in the 1960s with them, if I'm not mistaken? I remember Ken White talking about that on his "It's Not Rico" podcast. I know that's not the real name of the podcast, but I'm just going to try to be funny there. All right, so let's move on now to the main topic of the podcast, which I hope I'm going to do some justice to, and that is the question of are there two Jews, three opinions? And, the subtitle to this, if you want, is How Jewish Law Works. And because I think that's really where it stems from. On the other hand, I might be wrong. That was a joke. Okay. But, I think I'm pretty correct in my assessment, hopefully. If I'm not, please let me know. But what I think is going on here is that I'm going to give a brief overview of how Jewish law works. First thing that needs to be said is regarding Jewish law, that it is not just specifically with regard to, just the holidays or what happened in the temple or anything, things along those lines. There is a lot of Jewish law that happens throughout your daily life and your daily living. When you get up in the morning, what are you supposed to do? When you put your shoes on, you're supposed to put your shoes on in a specific way, showing the right side, the deference and the respect, because, even though I'm a lefty, the right side is supposed to be the side of more strength and the things along those lines. And there are actually exceptions for those that are lefties to do things for the left manner on certain things. I'll leave that aside because that would get very, very, very deep into the weeds there. But so it's a compendium, not just of religious laws, but also of your daily life laws, and then again you have your civic laws. So in terms of torts, in terms of damages, in terms of partnerships, and those things, that is all encompassing as well. And additionally, then you have issues of marriage and divorce, which also goes on as well. And then you have, in terms of the, I guess the kosher section of things, in terms of how do things become kosher, the ability to, slaughter an animal properly, mixing of meat and milk, what does that constitute, and all of these things, which are very, very in depth and very outside of my scope of knowledge, to be quite fair. I have a little bit of knowledge of it, don't have a lot of knowledge of it. I would love to get some more knowledge of it, and God willing, I will at some point in time get that knowledge, but it ain't right now. So that's the first thing to realize about, Jewish law, is that there's Jewish law that touches every single part of our lives. For example, we try to be gratuitous and thank God for all of the things that we have, for food, for drink, after we relieve ourselves in the bathroom and the like. It's less intense than it sounds, maybe, but it is what it is. Okay, now how did Jewish law get to this point, or what is the evolution, if you pardon the pun, of Jewish law? So I'm going to give a very, very try to give a high level view on this. If there are any questions while I'm going through this, please make sure you go into the No Mic chat. You could ask a question there, or you can go ahead and ask the question out loud as well in using your microphone if you so desire. Okay, so obviously we've got the Torah, 5 books of Moses, though that is first. That is law, right? Now, that something that came with that is the oral law, and things that were not necessarily mentioned within or explicitly in the Bible, or there were things that were talked about. So one of the examples that I always like to give about this is, it says in the Torah that you should not boil a kid in its mother's milk. It says that 3 times. Why does it need to be explicitly 3 times? Why is just once? Why wouldn't once be enough? And there is something that is, and that is, there are certain other laws that get learnt out from those other two statings of that in a verse. And these are things that, this is the oral law, and this is a lot of what the Mishnah and the Talmud goes ahead and discusses this. And maybe I should do a podcast on the Talmud itself and just try to explain exactly what goes on in these volumes. That might be an interesting idea. I'd have to think about that. Give me some feedback on that if you think that's a good idea in the chat, or you could go into the comment section of this podcast and in Substack, and you can let me know what you think about it there as well. Okay, so anyway, so we go to the Mishnah and the Talmud, and they discussed many, many, many laws. And the Mishnah was the earlier half, the Talmud is the second half. Again, I think it's outside of the scope here, so I don't want to get bogged down onto that, because you could really get into the weeds on this, I believe. Then you go ahead and you're going to go to the 1100s. We're going to speed ahead here. The closing of the Babylonian Talmud took place, I want to say, in about 600 after the Common Era. And then we have, in about 1100, Maimonides, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, whom I've spoken about before, I spoke about in the last episode, a tremendous, tremendous individual, thinker, rabbi. He was the head doctor for Suleiman the Magnificent, if I'm not mistaken. I'm probably mispronouncing that, and if I am, I'm sure I'll be finding out about that one way or another. So anyhow, his magnum opus that he wrote was something that is called Mishnah Torah, or it's also called Yad HaChazaka, because there are 14 volumes of it. And what he does is he tries to strip away everything which is not needed and create the law, what the law is specifically. In fact, he doesn't even source his work. There are commentators that have come after him to go ahead and source his work, which is interesting in and of itself. And it tells you clearly what the law is. It doesn't give you any other opinions. It'll just say, this is the law, right? Now, like I said, commentators came in after that, some of them criticizing him in their writings and arguing with him sort of as a gloss on the page, which is now it's on the page for us, and how the book of Rambam is the Maimonides Mishnah Torah is written, or printed, I should say, these days. We've got all sorts of commentaries on the sides, and the main text is in the middle. And what you'll see is they'll argue, they'll disagree. They'll say, well, in this case, and in this case, and in this case, the law should be X, Y, and Z, and the like. And it created a little bit more confusion. Not to mention 2 other individuals who I should really mention at this point in time as well. One of them goes by the name of by the acronym of the Rosh, Resh Aleph Shin. I forget what his name was. You'll forgive me. Who was also wrote halachic work, Jewish law work, based on the Talmud, and then also Rabbi Yitzchak Elfasi, who comes from Fez, and he also wrote a lot of Jewish law halachic work, as we like to call it. So that was the Maimonides, and he created this. And ironically enough, he said, "My book, you're not going to need any other books. This is the be all and end all. Any questions, you can answer all the questions." Very good. Comes along all of this additional work built upon what the Rambam did, or what Maimonides did, what these other 2, the Rosh and the Rif, as Rabbi Isaac Alfasi is called, the Rif, what they did, and we have this whole thing. Go ahead, and we come to somebody else who wrote a series of books called the Torah, Arba Turim, it's called, and that is the 4 pillars. Torah, the Hebrew word for pillar is a Torah, and he said that these are the 4 pillars, and he codified to a degree the laws in four distinct genres and put them into those, which are daily living, the kashrus of things, business dealings, I guess you could say, and marriage. Those are the four. Marriage and divorce. Those are the four. And so they went ahead and he codified this. There were then commentators on that. So it got very not diluted, but it got very confusing once again. So comes along an individual who actually wrote a commentary on Maimonides. He wrote a commentary on the Arba Turim, and he says, you know what? I'm going to recodify everything. I am going to, based on the codification that the Arba Turim wrote, I'm going to go ahead and create something, again, which is going to be a lot easier to understand for everybody since everything is very confusing. And he went ahead and did that. And this is he called this work the Shulchan Aruch, or in English, this is called the set table. So what is he doing? He is setting everything up for us. Everything is upon a set table, which is very nice. How he did this to a degree was he took the rulings from Maimonides, from Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, and from the Rush, and 2 out of 3 basically is how he decided to rule. What he also did was, and just as a side point to that, the Rush was a Ashkenazic Jew, while Maimonides and Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, obviously since Rabbi Isaac was from Fez, they were both Sephardic Jews, and so it was basically a lot of what the Sephardic Jews do, and this is how they practice until today. Obviously, there are things that, modern things that creep in, but we'll get to, maybe we'll get to that. But what he did also was he added various opinions. So you have these multiple opinions. And so this continues, and again, he felt that what he's doing is he is going to go ahead and create this book where nobody else is needing to do anything else. They don't need any other works. This is all that's needed, which is, again, you could say it's God's sense of humor, or it's a bit of irony here, where the amount of work that has been done, super commentaries, all of this going on about on these books. It's amazing how much has come out from it. So it's a very interesting thing. But be that as it may, so this happens, and now we're getting into a time frame where there is what is called responsa literature that is starting to come out. And responsa literature is basically somebody writes a rabbi a question, and the rabbi responds to said question in giving the sources for and how the person should go ahead and do something. Responsa literature is a very live genre of halachic works. They are still going on today. They're still being printed, still being written by individuals. So again, we're gonna, it's some fascinating stuff. I this is stuff that's like really in my wheel. Really enjoy talking about this stuff. Right. So you have that. Come along 2 individuals in the late 19th century and say, this is getting very confusing. We got to fix this up. And they go about this in 2 different ways. And so once again, there is Rabbi Epstein, Rabbi Yechiel Michal Epstein, from a town in northern Russia. I pronounce it Navardik. And Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, who was in Lithuania, Poland area, in a small town called Radin. He goes by another name, one of the names of one of his books, called the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim meaning deserving or wanting life. And this is a book on speech, how you can talk, not talk, laws of speaking about somebody else. Again, fascinating, very in-depth, and, amazing work. And they go ahead. So Rabbi Kagan and Rabbi Epstein go ahead and they recodify things in totally different ways. This book that I have here, I'm showing that actually I've mentioned these two books in a newsletter, or a quote unquote newsletter, or newsletter, or Jewsletter. We haven't decided yet. you could go ahead and take a look at this book. It's called The Codification of Jewish Law and an Introduction to the Jurisprudence of the Mishnah Brura. And this is about what the Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan wrote. He wrote his series of books on the called the Mishnah Brura, a set of 6 volumes, which are specifically only on daily life. Only on daily life. That's it. That's all it's on. That's, and he brings his commentary, and again, he goes ahead and he brings multiple sources within this, and he goes ahead and eventually he'll come up to an opinion on how the best way that it should be done is. What he will try to do is he will try to cut the tension and find a way to do things that fit all opinions. Again, I'm not going to get into specifics in terms of that, but there are specific examples that I can give, but it's probably better not to do that for lots of reasons, I'd say. And then Rabbi Epstein, what he did was he went through and looked through the issues that were discussed in the Talmud, and how he understood them was how he decided to go ahead and codify the law. And he used the same format that the Shulchan Aruch did, and also the Arba Turim, and he called this the Aruch HaShulchan. So it's a little bit of an opposite of the Shulchan Aruch, but again, it was a set table. Oh, there was one other thing I forgot to mention. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to confuse everybody as much as you may be confused at this point in time. But this, suffice it to say, and I guess the whole crux of what I'm trying to get to here is the fact that there are all these opinions on Jewish law, and you could almost always find one that you could rely upon. A lot of times, if you're going to have a case where something happened, you could say, okay, well, this you could, in this instance, even though we generally will not use this as the law, since it already happened, you could rely on it and the like. Okay, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. But why I think that this is where the concept of 2 Jews, 3 opinions came into being. Where we have all of this copious amounts of people saying what the law is and different sides of things, that people really got that. Now, let's get to a question here that was posted. Listening to explain this, I have a much better sense of why yeshiva education is just about studying the Talmud, given the innumerable pathways there are to follow, and how the joke about the number of Jews and opinions is even funnier than I had thought. Exactly why I did this. From day-to-day living, your life perspective, how does the average person get a grasp of Jewish law to live a truly Jewish life? Are they cherry-picking, relying on just the tempo of Shabbos, religious holidays, habits? Lot to unpack there. Okay, so let's try to do this. A lot of it is, for a lot of people who are religious from birth, it's inherent. It's all built in to, their lives already, and they understand it. And for, let's say, people who were not observant and went ahead and became observant, there's a learning process. There's a growing process. You've got to, understand or know what happens and how it happens. Same thing with somebody that, let's say, converts to Judaism, where they're going to have to, pick up on the cues. And people will explain it to them. I don't think that, people are that cruel. I can, speak firsthand about that. I don't think that people are that cruel about it. But there are things that you just don't know. I remember, just as an example here, I moved from Pittsburgh to New York in 1983, and I started 8th grade high school in a religious yeshiva. I had gone to a day school before that, and I thought I knew everything. I mean, I didn't think I knew everything, but I thought I knew enough to get by. And this was the week before Rosh Hashanah had started. We started school, and the week before Rosh Hashanah, we go ahead and we say certain, they're called slichos. They're prayers that, ask God to forgive us and things like that. And I had no idea about these things. I had no idea. So I get to the first day of school. I get there and they're starting morning services. I say, okay, great, morning services. I got this, right? And all of a sudden they start like what I would think is in the middle of something. And I'm like, what? How did they get there already? I'm totally confused. And it totally flummoxed me. And I had no idea of what was going on for that first year because nobody had ever even bothered to explain to me what was going on. So, this definitely does happen. Hold on one second. I have a text message from my father. All right. That's what I thought it was. Some content for next week, maybe. Anyhow, so there is definitely relying on that. There are some jokes that I could get into, but I won't get it because they're a little bit, again, within the weeds. I'll try not to do that. But this is one of the reasons why, I would say that with regard to the yeshiva education should not be just about studying the Talmud. I would say that they need to focus on other things as well, not just secular education-wise, which I think is important, speaking as a teacher of secular education subjects. But I also think that there are other things within the Jewish education that they are missing, and they should really do as well. That's maybe a different topic for a different time, because I don't want to get too much onto a soapbox. Any other questions? Hopefully that answered the question. If that didn't answer the question, please let me know. And are there any other questions? Okay, so it doesn't seem like that there are any other comments here. With that, I hope you enjoyed my my discourse on why there are two Jews with three opinions. And if you have any questions, please go ahead, leave them in the comments of the podcast. I really need to start up my Gmail for the podcast again. I have it. I should really start that up again. Always thank you once again to the moderators of the of the Fifth Column, unofficial Fifth Column Discord server, for letting me do the podcast live in front of a studio audience here. And also, thank you to Logan Eastman for the theme music. We always appreciate that. And, again, his Substack will be, God willing, I'll post that as well. In the meantime, we will see you in 2 weeks. I am Aaron Benedict, and I am not a rabbi.